It's not only important to know what to do, it's equally important to know what not to do.
Wow.
And I think I was clear about what I didn't want to do.
Okay.
There are many successful people who are not happy.
True.
From suicides to antidepressants, only the rich people do it in large numbers, at least. So I then changed it and said, therefore, let's rephrase it to say, if I'm happy, I'm successful. It's very ironical you say this. I haven't heard this, but I'll react to it completely, very immediately.
Yeah.
It's very ironical you say this because, if anything, our generation was free.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Lalith Dhanush show. And today I have with me an esteemed guest. It's my honor and privilege to have this man sitting by my side. His name is Ramesh Venkateswaran. He is a visiting faculty at IIM Bangalore and IIM Udaipur. He's worked with some of the biggest corporates. He's had a stint as a teacher also at a school level. And the best part about this is that he's an author of the book called The Happiness Trail, which every single 20-year-old must read. This podcast is super intellectually stimulating, so watch it and I'm sure you will be amazed and enthralled at the end of this episode. Ramesh Venkateswaran sir, thank you for coming on to my podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here, and it's an honor. I'm spellbound. And the first time I saw you in the Toastmasters meeting, I walked up to Sureka ma'am and I told her, ma'am, I really want to get him on my podcast because the way you were talking about your book, and I was able to resonate with that book at a very deep level. So thank you, sir. I'm super excited for this episode.
My pleasure, Lalith. I told you it's always my pleasure. Thanks for calling me. That's all I can say.
Sir, so tell me, today you are a faculty at IIM Bangalore, you're a faculty at IIM Udaipur, you've been helping a lot of youngsters through your book and you've added so much value. Where did all of this come from, sir? Like, when did you actually start helping people? Where did it start?
So if I look at it, maybe 1990 is a good place to start because I made a major shift in my life.
Okay. What was the shift like?
The shift was I left the corporate world.
Okay.
I come from a very traditional background, hardcore South Indian, father, naval officer, government servant. Nobody has ever done anything on their own. And I think it was at that stage when I was doing very well in the corporate world. And obviously these things, when some things happen to trigger off a thinking, it's just one of those tipping points kind of a thing. And I think a few incidents in that period when I was doing extremely well, I was at the senior management level, and some things happened, and then I started questioning, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? If I move from point A to point B, will my life be any different? And then I realized that, getting out of a job to another job is really just changing the organization, but not changing the system.
Correct.
Where, when you're on your own or you're in teaching or something, so I think it was at that point of time I took a major shift. I call it major because it's a variety of reasons. One is, so I questioned myself and I said, if I leave this and go to another job, will I get what I want to for the reasons I'm leaving here? And I realized I won't. I don't think I sat and, did. It's not like today's world where you go and click a few buttons and get 100 people telling you about it. You were on your own, you just sat over there and did something.
Are you happy about that switch you made back then?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there is an iota of doubt.
So what was that aha moment? Like, I know you gave that in like a very vague sentence, but can you take us back to that one specific day, that one specific time and moment? What was the tipping point?
The tipping point was this, that I said, I don't think the corporate world is going to be any different anywhere else. And I was all of 37, 38. It's not that I was 40, 50 or something. The second factor was those days in 1989, 90, however senior you were, the Indian salary system was very, very low. India really opened up, not in 91, 92 as people say with Narasimha Rao, but in terms of international salaries and packages, it was about 95, 96, 97.
Makes sense.
So when I left, I had 4 mouths to feed. I had no idea where my next income was coming from. And I had no savings.
What was that driving force, or what was that yes, I can go ahead?
So I always say this, you see, I'm a big Steve Jobs fan, Apple fan and all that. And I think in management also it's very important, or even personal life. most of us try to concentrate on what was this big point. Okay, but I have learned one thing. It's not only important to know what to do, it's equally important to know what not to do.
Wow.
And I think I was clear about what I didn't want to do. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I know I'm going to be in the same situation. And I think it was that clarity, or that was the tipping point, not so much about what I wanted to do, but what I was very clearly not wanting to do.
Makes sense.
And then the rest falls into place in some form or the other.
Makes sense. And I think there's a quote by Warren Buffett, right? The only way you can make a good decision is by making a bad one.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to know the contrasting other piece to it, and then you can figure the rest out. So once you shifted from corporate, did you have a plan in mind? Because today, a lot of youngsters think, if I have to make the shift, if I have to make the move, I need another assurance or surety that's ahead of me. What was next? What did you do after that?
Absolutely no idea. I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. And I was at a very senior level. Let me be clear about it. I was in a first Japanese motorcycle company. You were a big shot. But the honest to God truth is, I had no idea where my next meal was coming from. I was living on a day-to-day basis. So, the challenge in today's world, you mentioned that. I think today's generation, I've used this in the book, I use it everywhere. They want to use the escalator, they don't want elevator, they don't want to use the stairs. You want to get to the top fast. And I don't think there is a shortcut to success. There's no shortcut to comfort. There's no shortcut to a goal. You can be a Messi, you can be a Ronaldo, you can be a Federer. There's no shortcut.
True.
You struggle for 20 years before you know that you're there. And when you're struggling, you don't even know you're going to be there. Let's be clear about it.
True.
But are you clear on the journey? Are you clear on the path? So in my case, I think I was real enough to understand that my lifestyle is going to be different. Mm-hmm. My terms are going to be different. But I'm okay because it was my choice. And so therefore, I think I mentioned this, or I was telling some students. I said, here I was jet set flying thing, but the next day I was traveling second sleeper, no AC, I didn't have money. And I said, it's unfair on my part to try and do this. I didn't even know where I'm going to go. I used to go by air, I was going by bus, night buses to see my parents in Coimbatore. So I think it was an acceptance of the fact that I didn't want to do this, and if I wanted to do this, I have to be prepared for certain things. Mm-hmm. And therefore there was no problem. And the family support, of course. Your spouse has to be very, very supportive. But gradually, I think it didn't take more than 3 to 4 years, 2 to 3 years probably, as a reputation started building. People started talking about me and the work I was doing in whatever, largely corporate training. It was largely corporate training. So I started getting, and then things just went well for 15 years.
On the other side of success, the other word is failure. And one of the questions that I get asked by my students is, sir, how do we deal with failure? How do you overcome it? Or how do you not put your head and completely get involved in it? Right? So what do you think about failure, sir? What is your opinion about failure? At least the word failure.
Again, it's a tough, dicey question, Lalith. Because I do a lot of counseling. 32 years, I've seen hundreds of people who go through emotional stress. And a large amount of this emotional stress is because you can't handle the situation. And if you can't handle the situation, you're essentially saying you're failed. If you take it at a very basic level, when I look at it, so, I'll keep, you don't mind my using analogies, but when we do our training in counseling, we define this problem. What is a problem? And a problem is in a way a failure. That is
correct.
An obstacle. And essentially, we say that a problem is a situation where something prevents you from doing what you want to do. It doesn't. If something prevents you from doing what you have to do, you have a problem. So in a way, failure. Now, the reason I'm asking you this, I'm saying this is, I wanted 98%, I got 96%, I'm failed. So failure there is nothing absolute in failure. You may say below 40% is failure in anything, but for that 98% or 100% student, 96% is failure.
Correct.
So the problem of failure is, what are the metrics you have kept? What are the standards you have kept for failure? Mm-hmm. And then I think it's all about conditioning yourself, understanding as to Why, how do I deal with non-achievement of a target rather than failure?
Oh, wow. Wow. That's a very nice way to put it.
I'm just thinking, I've just thought of these words, a few words which come up to me. I've learned that you just rephrase the word and things look very different.
Yeah,
I was
changes
talking to somebody
perspective.
today, I've forgotten which was the word I was talking about. Yeah. So it's about non-achievement of a particular objective that I had.
Makes sense. So, on the contrary, now this is on a self-talk level, right? Now you're trying to tell yourself this is how you do it. But a lot of this failure comes in from the environment that you are surrounded with, and you have the primary environment, which is your house, your parents, like you just mentioned. Now, I feel students get into that zone not only because of their own thinking, but also because of the priming, you could say, that they receive from their parents. How can they deal this with their parent? I mean, on the other side, because a lot of parents will always ask how to deal with children, but I want to know, how can children deal with parents? Because parents always have expectations, they compare you, which is, I feel, one of the biggest killers of creativity or your own personal self-growth.
Absolutely. Lalith, unfortunately, there's no quick fix formula for this. How do I do this? 4 steps to dealing with it, 7 steps to... It doesn't work. Because you just said it. The starting point for stress is the parent. It's never the kid. Let's face it. I mean, till we are 10, 12, 15, 16, 17, the parent is running your life. At least the first, let's say, till teenage. Now, therefore, you are only a product of your parents' system. And therefore, so to be able to do it, it's very difficult for a teenager to call the shots in the house.
Correct. Very true.
It's very, very difficult. So this is what, in our counseling center, we used to have a lot of parents coming and complaining. We used to do work in schools. And they said, let's open a counseling center, this, that. And then they said, this child has a problem, this child has a problem, this. And within 30 minutes, you'll realize it's the parents have the problem. The child never has a problem.
Yes.
The child is only a byproduct or a product of the parents' thing. So how does a child deal with it? It's only if the parents are open to it. So we need to do a lot more. And so you brought me to another quick point that today, even my generation, we grew up, and your parents or grandparents definitely, we all grew up in a generation which I call as life if you take life as a journey, we were in a gently flowing stream. And you go on, you navigate, you'll reach the end somewhere in your own time, and life never changed. I told you we had 1 Fiat and 1 Ambassador and 1 Kelvinator, and that was what my grandfather saw, my father saw, I saw. So what happens is that you didn't need too many life skills to manage. There was nothing to be tempted because nobody else had anything else. Today you're on a whitewater rafting, you're on rapids. The generation today is on rapids. There's so many things happening. Times are changing, technology is changing, demands are changing, competition is huge.
Correct.
And therefore, if every role that you play needs a certain level of skill, competence and thinking, including parenting. Parenting requires as much skill as any other skill. So parents need to know what is their role, what is not their role, how do they get in, what do they do with. So families which are naturally tuned to that are lucky.
Okay.
Their children are well adapted, well adjusted, and so on and so on.
How do you think people of this generation can actually break those shackles and come out? What do you think would be the right way to do it?
I think they need a lot of mentoring and people at the educational institution level, at the social level, at the family level. You can't blame a 12, 13, 14-year-old because the 14-year-old is a result of 13 years of what he or she has seen. And it's very, very difficult. And it's not easy for parents. I can see that. I see it in my family. I have grandkids. I have, but it's about biting the bullet and calling, for example, I can share this with my son. And today I see it with my grandchildren. They're saying that the parents have said that, there's no TV. They don't have a TV at home. Now, this is a challenge because at this stage, at 8, 9, you're okay. But at 10, 12, when he sees all his other friends have got TVs and all, you feel, what kind of parents do I have?
Correct.
Unless you come from very, very sound, solid things. So I don't know. I mean, so I think there's a lot the system has to do. The system, as in the family system, the social system, the education. Lalith, simple things. Yeah, I've read in the book. How, you teach students honesty and integrity. They're going in a school bus where that guy is cutting a red light every day. The driver. No school takes notice of it. I see this day in and day out. Not one school, the best of schools in Bangalore. I haven't seen any school bus standing at a traffic light at 7 in the morning. So what is the kid going to understand? And then his father or mother also cut lights. What are you going to do? You can put them in a Gita class or a moral science class. It doesn't matter. These are to be just observed.
Observed. And I think that's where mentorship comes into play, right? You look at that person, you observe, and as you start observing, you start understanding the importance of mentorship. And for a long time in my life, sir, when I did not have direction, when I did not do things, I used to always look up to people who I'd love to be like. Dr. Rajdeep Manwani from Bangalore Toastmasters was one such person that I always looked up to. And then I always used to, directly copy what he said on stage, right? Maybe in my debate competition. But once when it actually when it started working, I started playing the game of fake it till you make it. And then I walked up to him when I won a competition and said, could you be my mentor? And since then, till now, he's been my mentor and it's changed my life forever. What do you think about mentorship, sir? How does one individual identify the right kind of mentor? And do you believe that there should be different mentors for different things in life?
Yes. If I need some support in something, I would go to somebody. So if you say multiple mentors, I think the word you're referring to is a coach, not a mentor.
Okay.
This is my view. My knowledge is very limited on
Okay.
this. Because that's for skills that you're looking at. A mentor is an overall, what shall we? I can't say be honest like this guy, be disciplined like that person, be something else like this person. Because if this honest person is indisciplined, it's very tough for him to be a mentor for you.
Correct.
The mentor is an overall personality. You appreciate that person for a sigma of multiple qualities.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Sir, I want to ask you this question. For a person who's watching between the age group of 18 to 23, a lot of them definitely do want to get into IIM for various reasons. Why should one individual, if they want to do an MBA, get into the IIM? Should there be a standard clarity template there that, okay, because I want this, I'm coming to the IIM? Or why the IIM?
It's just a brand. I mean, it's a simple, uncomplicated thing. It's the best brand that's available. It paves your path for the future. It gives you that many more doors to open at the time that you want. See, I keep telling students, once you're out of an IIM, that IIM is not worth the paper it's written on. So, but it gives you the first, second step. You see, all your qualifications and degrees, after the first 3-4 years, 5 years, when you're out on the job, it really doesn't matter. Nobody cares. True. I mean, okay, you got a good pedigree. Somebody will read your resume. Sure. Somebody will read your resume, you will stick it in somewhere and say, okay, you got a... But after that, you're on your own.
True.
Isn't it? So I think the aspiration is to want to be in the best, which is nothing wrong in that. But this is where, if I don't get into the best, doesn't mean I'm bad.
Nice.
That's it.
That's a good way to look at it.
I keep telling my students, I did an IIT and IIM. Everybody looks at me like I'm God's gift to the world. I'm just lucky on that day. There are millions of people better than me. I know that.
Wow.
It's okay. So take it, make the best of it, and move on.
That's nice. So moving on, I want to know, like, anytime somebody speaks to you, I'm sure whether you're giving some takeaway or not, but there is something to absorb, something to learn from what you have to say, from your experiences. What is that one, or not one thing, what is the most amazing thing about being a teacher? What do you like, what do you love about it?
I think there are 2-3 things. Maybe the first thing is it just keeps you energized. It keeps you energized. Every time you walk into a class, you have no idea what's going to happen. You have a game plan. a script. But especially when you're doing it at the management school level, a lot of it is discussions, a lot of it is questions, provoking, and therefore your mind is constantly active. It's constantly active, and I think it's for a person at my age to be in the company of 20 to 30-year-old. You're lucky. I mean, you're just lucky that you have a captive audience.
True. And like you said, it kind of energizes you, right? Like it makes you feel good. It gives you a lot of perspective. And what led you to write your book? I remember seeing your book for the first time when you did come to our meeting, and it's called The Happiness Trails, right? So what about this book do you really, I mean, what got you on that journey to write that book?
That's quite easy and quite interesting. It was a long journey. You see, what happened is I told you I was in the consulting field. In 2005, it's a long story but it'll cut a long story short. I gave up all my work and went to head a school in Ooty. The Lawrence School is a public school and things like that. It's a 170-year-old school. It was also my alma mater. I had studied there as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14. I had passed out of that school. My children also studied there. It's a co-educational boarding school. So anyway, I went there. I had a very short stint there, but that moved me from corporate consulting to 1990 to 2005 corporate consulting. 2005 onwards, I gave up all of that. So 2005, I went to a school. And then in 2006, for whatever reason, I left the school and I was sitting around and I found myself heading the business management school of the Dharmasthala Trust. So those in Karnataka will know Dharmasthala, I'm sure. But anyway, I went and headed a B school as a director. So during that period, from 2005 onwards, I came into very close contact with students on a 24/7 basis.
Okay.
The school is residential, 100%, and from anywhere from 9-year-old to 18-year-old, co-educational. And then I come to this graduate school, they're all graduates, co-educational, residential. That gave me a very different perspective to teaching. It was not just going into a class and coming out. I was on campus with them from food to this to that, so 24/7. Then what happened is, so I started talking to them off campus, in campus. I would start talking to them a lot of things, especially on values. So just to give you a perspective, and I went back, if you ask me this question, I went back and I had something in mind when I went to the Lawrence School, and I picked up a movie which I had seen, and I didn't realize what an impact it had made on me. Since you're a Toastmaster person, I think you should have everybody see it. Surekha will tell you it's a good movie. I called for a movie, and it was called A Man for All Seasons. This was a 1967 or 68 7 Academy Oscar award, and I realized that it had made an impact on me. And when I brought the film from America, those days you didn't get it in India, I was amazed that it had made such an impact on me as a 15, 16-year-old. It's all about a man with values, Sir Thomas More and King Henry VIII. So anyway, I started showing these films to the students in school, and then we would have a debate, discussion. Then I did it in college. So this continued. Then in my class in Bangalore and in my management school, in the 20th session, my last session used to be on this.
Oh, wow.
And my theme there was not happiness trail. It was called Dishonesty is not equal to cheating. And there was a theme I built around it on values, about the difference between being dishonest and being a cheat.
Okay.
So this continued for about 5-7 years. Then a classmate of mine from IIM had once wrote a mail to all of us saying, listen, we are all getting old, we got grandchildren. What is the message you leave behind? The 5 things that your grandchildren should do to lead a happy and meaningful life. And that set me thinking and said, what have I been talking about for the last 10 years? And slowly this evolved. And I said, okay, let me try and put this down to 5. And because I'm a management guy, management schools always you need a 4 Ps, 5W, 6H kind of a thing. So I gave in my 5 Is. And this 5 Is is what I believe is a result of my experience to lead a happy life.
Okay.
And my assumption was that we're working so hard. You asked me this question about failure and success. And we are all wanting to be successful. And we have our metrics of success. But deep down, we are assuming that if I'm successful, I will be happy. Deep down, we all want to be happy. And this is a means to happiness. So I said, our formula seems to be, our life's framework seems to be success equal to happiness. If I'm successful, I'll be happy. But then the whole book talks about that's not true.
Okay.
There are many successful people who are not happy.
True.
From suicides to antidepressants, only the rich people do it in large numbers, at least. So I then changed it and said, therefore, let's rephrase it to say, if I'm happy, I'm successful.
Wow.
And therefore, chase happiness
Wow.
and you will be successful.
So now, I mean, when you say this, it comes from such a profound place, and I'm able to relate to it because a lot of times, like when I've won an award, it feels great, right? At that moment, it feels great. But again, I have to go back to the same bed and sleep, and I'm still stuck with a trophy alone. And then I'm questioning myself, can I do this again? What if I don't do it? What if people, actually talk behind my back? All of these small little questions keep creeping up. So let's dig down a little more deeper into this aspect, sir. So I want to understand, if happiness is the goal, how do you attain that? What are the things that you have to do?
Yeah, Lalith, again, I'm not a philosopher.
Okay.
I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a greatly, thinker or anything like that. So I don't want to even make claims of trying to be like that. When I do get a saffron robe or a long beard and sit down, I will do that. But right now, no. So this is why I said my book is called, as I said, the minute you get into all of this, you immediately quote the scriptures, you quote the Gitas and the Bibles and the Qurans, or the Platos and the Socrates and the thinkers. So I call that the wisdom of the ages. Wisdom which has flown down from ages. My book and my philosophy is what I call the wisdom of age. Growing old. Nothing more complicated. So the things I have learned are a few things. One is, how do I get happiness? You can't chase happiness, because happiness is internal to you. What you chase is success, which gives you what you said is satisfaction. Ephemeral, transient, momentary high, which we can call it satisfaction, we can call it joy, which we loosely call happiness. The reason is simple. You believe that you will be extremely happy if you get into IIT, let's say. The day you have got into IIT, that goal is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's gone irrelevant. True. Now I'm stressed out because everybody is better than me there. The day I say, okay, I want to get a first class in my first year. The day you have got your first class in your first year, it's not going to help you in your second year. It's gone.
You still have to work harder.
So this is the jargon I learned, that we are living on what is called a hedonic treadmill. The treadmill is hedonic, that we are constantly moving. So all this is satisfaction. Happiness is what I decide to be. And you read hundreds of people quoting very nice, makes excellent statements. There are essentially, as I said, nobody can make me unhappy without my permission. So I think we need to differentiate between those triggers which make us happy, quote unquote, but effectively it gives us a sense of satisfaction. Happiness is internal to me. Satisfaction is external to me. Joy, satisfaction. The trigger is outside. Here the trigger is inside. And I think that is where today I am saying guys like us didn't need to think too much about it, because life didn't demand it. Today life demands it. You have to make choices.
Correct.
You have to make so many different decisions. And there is no right or wrong. That's why I call it the GPS. So you asked me what is my rope. So my path to happiness is those 5 eyes.
Can we quickly state that for 5
Yeah,
eyes?
so I look at 5 eyes. So why is this 5 eyes important? Why it's so basically I said, for the young people especially, life is a journey, right? And we need direction. So in the olden days we had a compass which would tell us. Now compass was okay up to a point, but what did the compass do? The compass only tells you it is in the north. The north is here. It doesn't tell you anything more than that. Today I say that you don't need a compass is not enough. What we need is a GPS. Because a GPS tells you a few things. It tells you different routes, different problems, different situations. So, but for a GPS to work, you need 2 inputs. A compass doesn't need 2 inputs. It doesn't need any input. It just tells you north. A GPS necessarily needs two things. One is it must know where you want to go. Therefore, you must have clarity on that. Whether I want to be this or that or this or that. That is chaos in itself because your parents want you to do something, you have to want to do something, the world wants you to do something, so on. So that's one. But the second important thing of a GPS is it must also know where you are. You must know your own talents. You must know your interest. There's no point in me aspiring to be you.
Correct. Correct.
You understand? Your destination and my destination can't be the same or may not be the same. So why I call this book, and that's why I see it's relevant, is I'm saying you take stock of your situation. You decide what is relevant. Once you got it, for me the 5 I's are things we should be doing which will lead us to the path of being comfortable with ourselves. For me, happiness is being at peace with yourself. That's happiness. And therefore I've made peace with myself when I left the corporate world, saying I don't have a problem traveling by scooter, by a night bus. It didn't matter to me. So I think, so the 5 I's for me are, one is, the first I is integrity. And integrity again, I've evolved in the last few months of chatting with people like you. The minute we talk of integrity, we talk of honesty. I am using a marketing definition of integrity. And marketing is clarity of who you are. As long as you can sleep well at night. You could be the most dishonest guy, but I'm clear that this is my strength. I'm good, and with that, I don't mind cheating 5 guys, but I'll sleep well. You have integrity. It may not be acceptable to the rest of the people.
Correct.
But as far as I'm concerned, you know what you're doing in some way. But otherwise, ideally, integrity is a little bit of honesty. The second one I've said is interact, people. I said money cannot ever buy you happiness. Money can buy you comfort. But it's the people around you who will decide whether you're going to be happy or not. And then there are lots of examples on that. And I have learned this myself. And that's one of the reasons I didn't suffer the pangs of separation from the high-profile corporate world. Because I think I didn't realize the value, but now I do. The value of good friends, for whom it didn't matter who you were. I learned this progressively in the last 30 years. The third I for me is very important, because I think I've done that in the last 40 years, is involve. Put your heart into what you do. Trust your heart more than your mind. Because if your heart is not happy, you will never be happy. So don't over-intellectualize things. You need intelligence, you need intellect. But at the end of the day, so when I left this great public school, Lawrence School, it's top 5 schools and all, and I left for whatever reason. Immediately I got calls from large number of people. I had made an impact there, my word had gone, people had gone around. Large number of people from very top schools in India called me and said, will you come to this school, will you come to that school, we're looking. I said, no, I won't. He said, why? We are equally on the top 5 public schools in the country. I said the answer is very simple. What took me was not that it was a great school. It was my heart was in that school. And that's the only reason I went. And I said, my heart is not in your school. Why would I want to come there? So for me, involve is the third thing. And for this generation, I think it's extremely. So the I in people is very important for this generation, because we have become a completely disconnected generation. Thanks to the social media, thanks to the mobile phone, we have stopped talking to people personally. And there are lots of examples I've used, and lots of them. Similarly, involved. We have lost pride in doing something 100%. I look at our temples and I look at our structures of 1,000 years and 2,000 years old. We can't build a building without cracks and patches and so on. And this is the generation we are leaving behind. We are to blame. My generation is to blame. But this is the reality. So they have lost the ability to take pride in what they're doing. For me, it was pride to make my bed in the morning, pride to fold the thing, pride to do this, pride to see my report going on, handwritten project reports. I would look at it with pride to say, yeah, it looks good. We are a cut and paste generation. And the problem is, we want to get to the fast. Everybody wants to be a unicorn before the startup. But read the life of Jeff Bezos, read the life of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Brian Chesky, all the big names. 20 years, they didn't know where their next meal was going to come from. Phil Knight of Nike, Brian Chesky of Airbnb, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Come on, 15, 20 years, they were living bootstrapping. So we only see this, and therefore we just don't have the other fundament. The fourth I is what you just talked about, and it's very important today, is we're living in a world which is changing every 5 years. Our world changed every 20 years. And therefore you better be ready to learn, imbibe, absorb. And I keep saying that as you grow older, it becomes difficult because we become pig-headed. More than that, as you grow up the hierarchy, people expect you to know, so it becomes difficult to say, I don't know.
Wow. Wow.
You know, as a manager, as a teacher, I tell my class, then they ask you a question, I say, sorry, I really don't know. Why don't you, let's talk about it next time.
I think it takes real honest courage.
It's honesty. See, it all boils down to honesty.
Honesty, yeah.
But it is very important because as you grow older, it becomes more difficult for two reasons. One is my own ego. The second is I'm living up to your expectations.
Yeah. Makes sense.
He is my manager, he doesn't know. Kind of stuff. So that's and the fifth, which I think is again very, very important, especially for people in this country, and all of us sitting in the comfort of a room like this, is impact. What change have you brought about to people around you? Have you made a difference? And I keep telling my students, it's not your resume difference that I put market share by so much. That's you're paid for it. Have you done something to make a difference to people around you, to their lives, to their well-being? And I said, we in this country, we are the 200 million people. If you're watching the YouTube, you're one of those 200 million people, if they're watching you.
Correct.
And we have been the beneficiaries of a system that allowed us to grow. Let's be clear. I'm certainly very clear about it. IIT and IIM, somebody else paid the fees for it. And therefore, I'm very happy. I never went abroad. I never studied abroad. I'm so happy I'm in the country. And I believe we owe it back to give back to this country in some way or the other. So I'm not a great fan of all the guys who go abroad and settle down there. I think we should go. You must see the world. You must see what are the boundaries of, or no boundaries of achievement. But end of the day, we are the fortunate few who need to come back. So these are my 5 I's in some way or the other.
True, sir. And I like the last point because when I went abroad, the perception to reality was so different. And I realized that there's so much here, which you don't realize. Like I used to complain about eating upma, with my mother. But when I went there and I had nobody to cook for me, I started developing gratitude. And then I realized I am actually blessed to be in this country, right? If you go to the US, everything's structured, everything's systemized. But here, it might not be structured. Guess what? You can do it. You could take it head on. And being the guy who went there and came back, now I tell my students that your reason should be super specific to go there. Like if you're just watching a movie or two and now you want to blow your parents' money there, I'm sure you're going to be even more miserable there, like because you have no direction. And I definitely do resonate with what you're saying, sir. I love those 5 I's. I want to ask you this. In those 5 I's, which one do you think is the most important one?
I know somebody will ask me this question. You see, I will use my favorite Chartwala analogy in this. And I will use another analogy. You see, there is nothing called, I have in some ways put a hierarchy to it, but I have not put it to say impact is the least. So in my case, what I have said is you work on a foundation of integrity. It's your foundation. The 3 pillars for me are people, interact, heart into it, involve, imbibe. And on the superstructure is, have you made an impact? But that's the way I look at it. But for me, integrity is definitely the number one. But to answer your question, I would think that each one, that's where, somebody asked me saying your book is nice, but you haven't given an answer. I said it's because there is no answer. You have to find your answer to it. I call this book, so therefore my Chartwala thing is, when I went out of IIM, gold medalist and all that, I had a boss and one day, very down to earth guy. he asked me for a report or something, and I said, it'll take time, sir, I'll give it. He says, why time? There's no time. Then he says, no, I said, I have to do so. He says, listen, we are all like chartwalas. I said, what do you mean? He says, when you go to a chartwala, depending on Haldiram or Kailash Parbat or wherever you are in the world, how many items does he have on a menu? So I said, depending on the size, he'll have 100, 200, 300 items, whatever it is. He says, yes. He says, how many ingredients do you think he has? I said, maybe 7, 8, 9 masalas he has. He says, exactly. He says, the chartwala's skill is in knowing what masala can do what, and how much of a masala is required for whose recipe. He says, we all have the same data points, and that's the best strategy lesson I've learned. Anybody can press a Google and get the same data point. The question is, do you have the skill to know two things? Today I tell my students two things. One is you must know what data point to pull out. It's like a doctor. I can ask you for a lab test, but if I ask for the test which is not connected with the disease, I will give you a prescription not connected with the disease.
Wow.
It's very simple. So the skill for me is in diagnosis, not in prescription. And therefore, there is no one eye. You decide, I am okay. For me, let's say for me, right now, maybe learning is my most important, but I'm okay with the other four.
Makes sense.
I'm okay with the other four. This is my one analogy. The chartwala for me is the best I've learned ever. And
I'm going to generously steal that from you now.
you can steal it as long as people you see, I do this in these B schools because, we all have a chip on our shoulder. We are IIM, IIT. And I say, listen, you're right down to earth chartwalas.
Wow.
I would do this at least 6 to 8 times in my course. Let's get down to it. What are you looking at? You're looking at 7 data points.
Nice.
That's it. The other way to look at it is, the way you look at it is, I read this somewhere, that, you all are important. A pilot cannot say, today I don't feel like doing D3 tests, let me do those 2 tests. They're all important. What do you do? Yeah. Okay. So you have to, on one hand I say all are equally important. The other hand I say you customize it to your requirement.
Makes sense.
And that's the best I can say.
True. I really like the way you use these examples of analogies in between. It simplifies the concept in much better way. Sir, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to have you by my side here and really pick off your brains, because for me, at the end of the day, this podcast is not just a networking tool or not just an opportunity to meet, but an opportunity to unlearn all the things that I've had. And it's been happening for the last 6 months. And I really, really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart.
My pleasure.
For being here. And it means a lot. And I really wish you get all the more strength and courage to change more people's perspectives for as many years as possible.
Thank you, Lalith. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
I hope so too.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure having you, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.